I absolutely love Barston. It's a wonderful, big, expanse of water. It's full of fish. You can catch loads of different species. There's bream, there's carp, there's F1s, and they respond really well to feeder tactics. Tomorrow is a huge match. It's the latest big match at Barston. It's the Gary Rogers on the Fly TV. It's the UK Feeder Champs. It's the latest round of the UK Feeder Champs at Barston. There's some fantastic anglers fishing this event. So I thought I'd walk you through the whole approach, and it starts here in the garden, getting a bit of kit ready. So first of all, we need to look at the rods that we're going to take. Feeding is really important at Barston. You cannot get away with just casting out your feeder and relying on that little parcel of bait to do the job for you. So we need somewhere feeding our feeder swim. It's a feeder only match tomorrow. That means that we need some sort of bosher rod. We call it a bosher rod. Basically, it's a carp rod. Heavy, strong braid on it, a big feeder. We can cast out loose feed over the top of our method feeder, bring that in, and then cast our method feeder onto the same line. So that's the first rod in the bag. I've got a cage feeder on there at the moment. Nice big reel, heavy braid. It's an 11-foot, it's a CTX, a Free Spirit CTX carp rod that is. And that has been brilliant for me for boshing large amounts of bait out onto my method or hybrid feeder fishing areas. The next rods that we need are actual fishing rods. So in my rod bag here, I've got my favourite Barston fishing rod. He's a bit tangled up at the minute. I'm going to put all the rod bands on in a second when I finish talking to you guys. But this is my favourite Barston method feeder, hybrid feeder fishing rod. And it is all set up ready to go. It's a CTX carp feeder 11-footer. Now, a lot of people think an 11-foot feeder at Barston, surely you need to cast 60, 70, 80 metres. It's a long chuck venue. That's maybe the case on some pegs, but most of the fishing I do at Barston is probably like 30 to 50 metres. An 11-foot rod is absolutely superb for that. This rod is slightly stepped up, I'm going to say, to the standard 11-foot feeder rods. Handles obviously those big fish in Barston with ease. I've got a big reel on there. This is loaded with 023 Suffix Advance. I've got a 10-pound shot leader on there as well for chucking. Really simple setup. Keep your eye out because you guys might have an opportunity to win one or two of these rods later on in the video, so keep your eye out for that. But that is my favourite Barston feeder rod. Like I say, most of the fishing at Barston, for me anyway, is 30 to 50 metres. But what if I do draw one of those pegs where we need to cast a little bit further? Well, in the next, obviously, compartment down, we've got our big boys. This is a High S, Free Spirit High S power feeder. This is for chucking up to 100 metres really. It's 13 feet in length, it's powerful, it's going to land big fish easily, but it's about casting the distance. So if I want to put on heavier feeders, 45, 60 gram feeders, and chuck the distance, this is the rod I'm going to use, a 13-footer. Slightly lighter reel line just to enable me to cast that further distance. This is 020, same shot leader, £10, no mess around with a £10 shot leader. That's the hardware side of it sorted. I think next thing we need to look at is bait, and also I want to talk to you about where I fancy drawing, because the draw is going to be massively important tomorrow. How would you like the chance to win one of the rods that I'm using in this video? We've got 5 of these beauties to give away. This is the 11-foot carp feeder. It's a CTX and it's from Free Spirit. It's my favourite rod for fishing 30 to 50 or 60 metres on venues like Barston, Boddington, those big expansive waters where you're targeting big carp. I've landed fish up to £20 on this rod. I think it's absolutely fantastic for casting the distance, but also playing those big fish. So we've got 5 of these to give away. That means there's 5 chances for you to be a winner. If you head over to cuttingedgecomps.co.uk, have a go on the competition, and hopefully it's your lucky day. Bait time. And I always like to think you've got to keep it simple. We're fishing for big fish, they're going to be eating machines. It's beautiful weather at the minute, and even though Barston's quite a shallow lake, I think we've got to put quite a bit of bait in to like drag them down to the bottom. Like I said before, our method feeder isn't enough. We need to put some bait in to pull them down. Hopefully they stay down there long enough for them to make a mistake and pick up our hook bait. So feed is going to be the name of the game. Now I like to feed some like particles. So I'm talking hemp seed, sweet corn. So depending on where I draw, generally the deeper swims I want to be feeding bigger particles like sweet corn. If it's shallow enough, or I feel I need to make something happen, that's when the hemp seed comes into play. But I'm hoping tomorrow that I can feed a lot of sweet corn, drag the fish down. It's a great bait. Fishing Barston, love sweet corn. I'm going to take as many tins as I can physically carry around to my swim, and I'm going to be feeding aggressively. So I'm going to use that baiting up rod, the baiting up feeder, and I'm going to be feeding sweet corn into the swim. Standard hybrid feeder tactics are going to be the name of the game for me tomorrow. So that means soaking up some 2 mils. These are the Swim Stim Amino original 2 mils. I'm going to soak those up. I usually do them sort of like an hour before the draw, something like that. It takes me an hour to get to Barston from here, so I'll soak them up just before I leave, hour before the draw. It means I've had like 3-4 hours of soaking up time. I don't want to add too much water to the pellets. I just want them nice and soft, but I don't want them to go to a mush. So I just want to add a little bit of water just before I leave here, make sure they're soaked through, and then I can just retouch them on the bank if I need to. I always take a bit of this Swim Stim F1 Sweet Milled Expander. Adds a lovely flavour and a little bit of colour, but also sometimes the fish just want a little bit of ground bait, just some smaller particles in amongst those pellets, and that ticks the box. Hook bait wise, you know me, it's a 5 mil yellow wowser. I just try and keep it really simple basic bait combinations, but I think when the fish are feeding, that's definitely the way to go. Now pegs wise, let's just quickly talk about swims, because I want to draw a shallow peg really tomorrow. The shallow areas are really the teens, and maybe sort of like 115 to 124. Obviously I'd love to draw 124. Everyone wants to draw the M peg 124. It's one of the most famous pegs in the country, so I'd love to draw there. I've been spending a lot of time on the roadside further down, sort of like in the 90s, and I'm not really happy with those sort of pegs. I want to be clubhouse side of the island for anyone that knows Barston, so that generally means that the bottom's a little bit harder. You can catch fish a little bit easier on a feeder. So anywhere at the top end of the lake, I don't want to be right down the bottom end where the water's a bit deeper and it's a bit siltier. That'd be an area I'd want to avoid, but I'm pretty happy. I've been doing quite well at Barston. Last few matches I've fished there, I think I've been second on nearly all of them. I've either won the match or come second on sort of like my last 4 or 5 matches at Barston. So pretty confident if we can get a reasonable peg, fingers crossed for our draw in the morning.
Peg 54. Not my ideal choice for today. I think on a float match maybe it's a good peg. You can slap a pole, shallow, maybe pellet waggler, and you'll catch some big fish here potentially, but obviously feeder fishing on the bottom could be a bit tricky. Let's talk you through the approach. So we've got 4 rods set up, 1 little short rod. Hopefully I'm going to catch in this edge at some point. Sooner rather than later will give me a better chance of winning the section, but hopefully last hour we'll catch a few down that edge. Got the little 10-foot feeder light there. We've got our baiting up rod, and then we've got 2 longer rods. So we've got, this is the rod I use all the time here at Barston. It's a Free Spirit CTX, it's carp feeder, 11 footer. Lovely rod, perfect rod for here at Barston, that is. beautiful rod. And then we've got a slightly longer rod if we need to go big chucking. That's the special 13 footer, high S, beautiful rod. Right, let's look at the bait.
We are delighted to bring you this video in association with Tap and Shower, a fantastic family-run business that provide the best plumbing and bathroom equipment there is to offer. If you check out their website, they've got some incredible offers with the best brands at trade prices. So if you like a bit of DIY at home, or if you're a plumber in the trade looking for the best stuff at the right price, all you've got to do is check out their website and see the fantastic deals that they have on offer all the time. They deliver the products to your door, 1 to 4 days. You're going to have the stuff there to fit the bathroom of your dreams. Tap and Shower, click the link below.
We've got our tub that's going to have some micros in it in a minute. We've got corn, we've got more corn, we've got even more corn, we've got a bit of crushed hemp. We've got our hook baits, the old yellow wowser, more corn. Right, name of the game for me is I want to bosh a little bit of bait out there. I've only sticked up at 30 metres. I'm going to start at 30 metres. I'm not going to go long chucking to start with. I'm going to put some bait in at 30 metres and see how it goes. So I'm going to use the baiting up rod, big feeder, put a bit of corn in, maybe a bit of crushed hemp if I need to make something happen. And then I'm going to cast my hybrid feeder over the top. Hybrid feeders, I say hybrid feeders, they're called Jura Banjos. It's the Preston Jura Banjos. This is what I like to use. Nice big feeder. Get loads of bait in that. Casts a long way. That's 30 gram. I've changed the elastic to a black hydro. I always like to retie the elastic because I'm happy then with my knots. That's what I'm going to chuck out. I don't envisage scaling down feeder size. They're the feeders for boshing the bait out. Cast beautifully, hold the bait in really nice. That's a 6 square. That's a small 6. We actually, when we're fishing, we call this the 7 square because that's a 6 square. This is just basically a big 6, so we call that the 7 square. It's going to be a stunning day. I'm hoping that we get pulled in by a load of carp. There's one cruising there. He's just dipped down. Trouble is, it's too nice a day really for feeder fishing. We want everything on the bottom, and I think it's maybe a little bit too deep here. Maybe those fish are just going to be cruising around top couple of feet of the water. Hopefully, bosh a bit of bait in, we might drag a few down. Wish me luck.
As soon as the all-in sounds, first job is to get some bait into the swim. I'm only fishing 30 metres, which means I don't really need the big bosher rod for this line. That big bosher rod is there if I need to chuck bigger feeders or longer distances. So this big bosher rod that I've got set up on my side tray, it's capable of chucking huge feeders. The maximum size feeder that we're allowed in World Championship rules is 50mm by 70mm. That is a huge feeder. It's the same size as a baked bean tin almost, and it means that you can feed loads of bait in one go. But for this session, we're chucking those rocket feeders. They cast really nicely. It means I can do it with that 11-foot CTX feeder rod. Emptying out those feeders on the surface and then coming back, swapping over, clipping on my hybrid feeder and casting it out over that extra amount of bait. That hopefully is going to be the way to go today. I'm going to feed varying amounts throughout the day, maybe up to 3, 4, 5 feederfuls for each fish, and we're going to see if we can create a really, really attractive area on the lake. The bites here at Barston are absolutely brilliant. You've got to be on your rod, otherwise you're going to lose that rod. It's going to be heading off across the lake because these fish tear off at such speed. Now, at the moment, there doesn't seem to be many bream or skimmers feeding at Barston. It's the carp and the F1s that are the target, and they're the ones that pick up the bait and run away with it as fast as you can pick up the rod. So, my trick is I fish with the bail arm open, I fish with the line clip facing me, and I mark the line in front of the line clip. What this does is when I get a bite, it means that I've got that extra split second to flick the line off of the line clip and let the fish run on a free line. Then, if I'm fortunate, when I'm reeling the fish back, I can spot the mark that I've made on the main line coming through the rings, and I can re-clip up, so I haven't got to re-stick up after I've landed the fish. Just saves a little bit of time. The fact that leaving the bail arm open gives me better access to the line clip also gives me that split second to just assess the situation and decide whether I need to take the line out of that line clip or not. Every fish at Barston is fighting so hard at the moment. The warm water conditions are creating really active fish. They pull your arm off, and you've got to make sure that every fish ends up in the net. The fish here at the moment are averaging sort of like 8 to 12 pound. It means that every fish is really valuable. The expected weights are around 100 pounds, so you don't need many fish to amass a match winning or a section winning weight. For the first half of the match, the fishing is good. Bite times are between 30 seconds and 3 minutes, which means the fish are coming to the bait, homing in on that bait so fast, dipping down, mopping up as much as they can, and fortunately for me, they're making a mistake and picking up my hook bait. Still using that yellow wowser hook bait, and bites, as always, ripping the rod off of the rest. Every fish is tearing off. Lots of fish, interestingly, are coming up in the water really fast. So quite often when I'm method feeder fishing or hybrid feeder fishing, I find that the fish tend to stay a little bit deeper when you're playing them. On this particular occasion, every fish that I hooked seemed to come up to the surface as soon as you hooked it, which told me the fish want to be up in the water. They're picking up the bait, they're going back to where they feel comfortable. That's when you're getting your bite, you're seeing the indication on your tip, and then when you're hooking the fish, they're already on the surface. So these fish want to be up in the water, which is acceptable and obvious when you think of the conditions. Bright, hot, still sunny days, those carp are going to be up in the water. It's your job as an angler to force them down onto the bottom. I'd heard of a few people catching fish, but not many people had caught the same number as me. At halfway point, I've probably got 8 or 9 carp, which when you think about it, averaging 8, 9, 10 pound, that's a good weight to going into the second half of the match. Bites were slowing down, but I felt that was conditions based, and I was hoping that in the last hour those fish were going to come on even stronger and we were going to really finish with a flurry.
Let's have an update, folks, while this plane goes over the top. We've got about 2¼ hours to go, and we've got about 60 pound. We've had, I think we've got 8 or 9 carp. We've got a big F1, we've got a little skimmer. I've lost 2 decent fish, which is very frustrating. We had a good second hour, but it seems to have slowed up a little bit. Having said that, last 2 chalks have had indications back on my main swim, so let's see if we can get in on that tip a bit tight. When we get a bite, you know about it, that's for sure. So I'm just not quite worked out how to feed the swim yet, I've got to be honest. Sometimes I'm feeding the swim and then casting over the top. Sometimes I'm just casting out and catching a fish. It's a little bit tricky to work out, but like I say, we're just starting to get a few indications. Hopefully it's feeding time. I've not heard of any massive weights, but I imagine there's some decent weights dotted around the lake. I've got so much space today, so you can see we're getting little indications, and when it decides to go, it goes, let me tell you. Interestingly, it's about 6 foot deep where we're chucking, which I think is probably a little bit too deep, if I'm honest. I think the fish want to be in shallow water today, but interestingly, every fish that we hook is coming up to the surface so fast. They're swirling on the surface, almost like picking up the feeder and bolting to the surface, so probably shows you where they want to be. Little tiny indication. Hopefully we can carry on catching. I'm hoping that this last couple of hours we can start to motor. Obviously usually the best time of the day. We'll probably increase the feed and try and kick on a little bit, try and catch some big boys.
If I'm honest, the conditions in the last half of the match stumped me a little bit. Even flatter, hotter, stiller conditions, the wind dropped even more, and it just meant those few fish that were in the area were really, really high up in the water. They were a little bit less confident, so they weren't dipping down onto the bottom for long enough for me to catch them, and also I didn't feel that there was enough competition down there for me to get as many bites as I needed. So I needed to make a change. The bottom where I've been fishing, it was fizzing. There was an odd fish going down, but because it was fizzing, that meant that the fish down there were kicking up the silt, and I just feel that when you get in that situation, it makes it harder for the fish to find your hook bait. So I need to make a change. I tried a shorter, which, as you'd expect on a match that lasts until 5 in the afternoon, you'd think that fishing shorter would catch you a lot of fish, but that just wasn't the way. My next move was to restart my session. So with an hour to go, I re-sticked up, I went further, I went to 45 metres into some fresh ground, an area that hadn't been disturbed all day, and I ended up catching 2 or 3 fish just to tick me over for the last hour. Would it be enough to get me over the line? That would be the question.
That's that. Waiting for the scales now. Just packed up. I reckon I've got 85 to 90 pounds, something like that. Difficult to guess, but I'm usually about right with my weights. I've walked on the section, and the only person that's caught a few fish that reckons he could trouble me is Joe Jagger. Now, Joe Jagger's admitting to 75 pounds, so hopefully he's not underestimated. It's not been too great down this end. I think there's been a lot of 50, 60 pounds from what I'm hearing. Like I say, hopefully we've won the section. Last couple of hours, it just didn't happen. I don't know what the problem was. Obviously it's been a red hot day. It's so bright and still. and I think what few fish are down here wanted to be up in the water, so made it difficult to catch them. One thing I did do, and it got me a couple of fish, is I started a new line. So went a little bit further, I started a new line, and it got me a couple of fish, but it was the right time of day anyway. So if I'd have stayed on my main line and carried on, I think I'd have probably caught a few fish anyway. But we got a couple of fish by starting a new line. It's been good. Not many skimmers, all decent carp. Not as big as I've caught here before. Been fishing a few matches here recently over the far side. If you look over there, so over that far side. And the last couple of times I've been over there, the fish have been like average double figures. I reckon they've averaged £6–7 today. Let's see what we weigh in. Hopefully I've underestimated. I did underestimate a little bit. So I've weighed £107, including some beautiful big F1s, you know. The F1s in Barston are absolutely stunning. I guess the average sort of like £5 now, those F1s. And it's not uncommon for F1s to be weighed in at sort of like £7 or £8. So some beautiful big fish. Fourth in the match. Eddie Bryden's won the match from peg 120 with £160. Well done, Eddie. There's been £120, there's been £112, and I've had 107 for fourth in the match. Won the section though, so pretty pleased about that. I'm not going to say I'm happy with my performance because we just lost our way a little bit later on in the day. I'm not saying that we could have got close to Eddie Bryden's weight of £160, but I think second on the day that would have been possible. We've lost a couple of big fish as well, you know. I've lost 2 fish that would have been £10 each at least, and just those fish would have put me second. So a couple of decisions that we needed to make a little bit better later on in the day, and maybe be a little bit more lucky in landing our fish. Thanks for watching, folks. Remember, all of the detailed stuff is on the members section. Click onto our YouTube page. There should be a join button. Click on that join button, and also please subscribe to this channel. Helps us out massively. You'll get updated whenever there's a new video. Until next time, folks, tight lines.